There we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
See it.
We're live.
Yes, we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, you are very welcome to this week's edition of Mauls, Balls and All, coming live to you from our Facebook group and also on YouTube as well. Your usual armchair analysis when we just shoot the breeze and we have casual chats, offering our own thoughts on the games and any current rugby issues that might have popped up in the group over the week, or that indeed are current in across all the media spheres that we all encounter on a daily basis. With me this evening is the regular, our man in Glasgow. We have Mike Reedy. We have the Enniscorthy man, Richard Holland. Then we have Peter Martin. And sorry, where are you?
New Ross.
Richard.
Never call me a
New
Scalder
Ross,
again.
sorry. New
Jeez,
Ross.
I'm 45 seconds in, Burton's a misstep already. What the hell?
Jesus, God almighty. Anyway, Peter Martin is with us also. And also our special guest this evening is Mr. Reggie Corrigan, and a man that deserves no introduction, but I've said in the past he's going to get one. Reggie Corrigan has nearly 140 caps for Leinster, and at the time of his retirement in the I think it was the 06-07 season, he was the most capped Leinster player. Then along came two individuals of Mr. Darcy and Mr. O'Driscoll, who kind of beat him on that one, but that was some achievement in the day. He also had, let me see, he played in two Rugby World Cups, 1999 and 2003, and indeed he was captain of the Irish team, I think, for two of those games, if Wikipedia is accurate. He also has, on top of that, 47 Ireland caps in total. He has played for Lansdowne, he has played for Greystones, he is a commentator, and now he is a business owner with Bright Wave Solutions. Reggie, how did I get on with that intro?
Not too bad, not too bad. Sounds good. I reckon, 140 caps, but by today's standards, that'll probably be about 250 because we played 80 minutes a game. Nowadays, they only play about 40 minutes a game as props. So I reckon, I definitely have twice that amount.
Well, I would agree with you. Reggie, do you reckon, actually, just an aside to all this, before we get into it, do you reckon the team that you played with in those World Cups, do you think you would compete in today's team, or is it a completely different ballgame?
I'd say the team that I finished with, let's say around 2006, 2007, would have a fair old go. But it's funny actually. We last weekend we were in the Aviva. We just launched the Past Players Club for Leinster, and we were in the Aviva. I'm part of the committee that's involved, and it was a great, fantastic day in the Aviva. But there was about 100 past players going back from way back to the modern, most recently retired, all getting together in the Aviva. But there was a lot of my generation there. And the one thing, after the game, a lot of the players came in, they were having their dinner. They were in a different section, the current crop of players and everything else. And the one thing I did notice was, I know everybody thinks they look big on the TV and on the pitch and everything else, but funnily enough, compared to some of the men of my generation, they're actually not as big as you would think in comparison. Like there was the likes of Victor Costello, Bob Casey, Malcolm O'Kelly, in the room, and many more. But alongside them, there wasn't, the current crop were probably even in some cases slightly shorter. Certainly in that case, and maybe not as big as them. But there's definitely more power there in the new generation of players, more strength there. Do you know what I mean? That we wouldn't have in our days. So size-wise, it compares. But pound for pound, these lads are packing so much more power and so much more strength than we would have done. So, I'd say we would have given them a good run for their money, but they probably would have come out on top.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Right, gentlemen, how are we all, by the way? Mike, Richie, Pete, all good?
Good.
Yeah, amazing as always.
Right, okay. Right. Okay, Reggie, I'm coming to you first on this. The big news of the day, obviously, was the announcement of Andy Farrell's squad for the upcoming Six Nations first game on the 2nd of February against France. What did you make of his selection? Was there any surprise omissions on your behalf? Any surprises at all?
I think it was a safe selection. I didn't think there was anything too shocking in it. I suppose is the way I describe it. There's the obvious ones that were there. I suppose you could argue maybe that the likes of Coombs might have got a look in. Certainly, there was a few players putting their hands up. There's no question about that. But I suppose people were probably thinking to themselves that this was going to be a squad that was going to maybe have a chance to blood for the future. But I heard Andy Farrell talking during the week, and that's not the way he operates. He doesn't care about 4-year cycles. He's not worried about what's going to happen by the time the next World Cup comes along. And I think that's the right way to be, because there's just going to be so much changes by the time that comes along. That he needs to worry about now. He's probably thinking as well, with a view to next year when he's away with the Lions, that he wants to have a fairly steady, consistent squad there that whoever he hands over the coaching role to can be familiar with. Hodness, there's a lot of arguments for him being involved. The likes of Caelan Blade were mentioned. But realistically, I don't think there was any major surprises. Certainly, no.
Yeah.
I saw like Ahern was another one who was having seriously good run of things at the moment. But I think Andy Farrell probably just feels, look, their time will come. It's just not right yet. Give them a little bit more time to feel their way through where they're at the moment, because the step up is just so big that he probably wasn't going to launch them on it just yet.
Yeah, no, fair point. Thanks, Reggie. Peter Martin, what did you think of the selection? Would you echo what Reggie said?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I'm just like, when I'm going through the different players, and particularly one of the most competitive areas in the Irish squad is back row, and like it's been said before, and I don't know whether much has been made of it or whatever, that we've only one genuine open side in Van der Fleer in the squad. I remember Brent Pope was on before, going on about how Farrell had to go to the last World Cup. He needs to have another open side in the team. Look, it didn't happen. Josh happens to be obviously the class player he is, and he seems to be, well, of late anyway, he's exceptionally durable. He doesn't break down too often. I suppose just talking about back rows is that, like, he mentioned about John Hodnett. I just wonder, is it a case that could John Hodnett become Cooney insofar as that here's a guy who's going to be playing out of his skin for, well, he's been playing exceptionally well since he came back from it. He had some significant injury issues with Munster, but ever since he's got fit, he's really kind of played himself into some very good form, and he's a vital part of what Rowntree is trying to do with that team. And I just wonder, early doors, is he going to be another John Cooney type guy where he's outstanding in his position, but he's just not going to get picked for X number of reasons. Apart from that, I don't think there's a whole lot else really you can say about the about the squad. The back three, I suppose, probably looks a little bit skinny, but insofar as I think some people maybe are trying to kind of pigeonhole certain players into being fullbacks and wings, but like we saw a few years ago, I think was it under Steve Hansen with Wales, that instead of having a fullback and two wings, he had centre fullback, right fullback, and left fullback. It was trying to be a little bit of innovation, but like I think with the modern game, everything being so flexible and so with versatility being top, is that, like, if you're a winger, you should be by and large be able to do a job at fullback as well. Like, you're still covering the backfield. Your positioning is just slightly different, I think, off set piece and so on. But you're pretty much going to do an awful lot. You run the ball back. You look for space. You'll have a go yourself. You have to obviously have a good kick chase game. So look, I think obviously Stockdale is going to be a guy who could probably well fill in at full back in the event that Keenan goes down.
Yeah.
Is that? Did you have a bad curry or something, Peter? That sounds like indigestion you're having there. Or
no, it's just every time I feckin' hear Stockdale on the team sheet, as long as it's Ulster, it's fine. But Jesus, Ireland. Anyway,
there's not an awful lot else really to say about Farrell's selection.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Pete. Richard Holland, your brief thoughts.
Yeah, the only two, and they weren't massive, would have been Coombs and Hodnett that weren't included. The rest was pretty much, I think, the 3 development players that they have in are going to learn massively. In particular, Pendergast, Ahern, and Ollie Yeager. They're going to learn vast amounts just by being involved in the camp. So that's a good thing to do, in particular with Pendergast, because with himself and Crowley, things are starting to look a little bit more bright at 10 for Ireland. So, yeah, I was no great surprises.
Hold on. We're going to come to that 10 issue now in a second. Mike Reedy, brief comments. Were you happy with that overall selection there?
Do you know, I just echo what Reggie said. Like, it's just a safe squad, really. You know, I just think we're missing a chance here again. Like, we have no natural replacements for Keane Healy, which is fucking shocking, really. And we're struggling for loose head props. There's 4 provinces. There's going to be two loose head props in every game. One of those must surely be good enough to be brought into the squad and given some. If we don't try him, we're never going to know. I mean, when is Keane Healy going to stop playing? Fucking when he's 50. It looks like another Mike Ross situation, like where we can't replace. Okay, we have Porter, but Jesus, if Porter gets injured, we're in serious trouble. And I also think Conor Murray is a bit of a pointless fucking inclusion now at the moment.
That was Mike. That was sorry to interrupt you. That was. I was just going to say before we wrapped up. That was one name that kept popping up in the group on the feeds. Caelan Blade. John Cooney,
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Conor Murray, when he comes on for Munster now, he fucking takes him backwards. He's a liability.
He's a 20-minute player. You bring Murray on to wrap up a game, depending on the scoreline, that sort of thing. Anyway, I just want to throw something out there. Reggie, maybe you might address this first. I saw this on the tweet machine or X or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Over the last 6 Rugby World Cups, during the 6 Nations of that year, Ireland have given debuts to a total of 3 players. That's all. Why the hell? What? Any reason for that in your ex-player, ex-pro?
Over the last 6 years, over the last 6 World Cups, in the year after they've given 6 debuts or 3 debuts, is that what you said?
Over the last 6 Rugby World Cups during the 6 Nations year. So Rugby World Cup and 6 Nations on before. Ireland have given test debuts to just 3 players.
Jesus Christ.
There you go.
There's nobody you're going to have retirements.
Do you mean the one before or the one after?
The year of the Rugby World Cup.
So the year.
The year after.
No, so yeah.
So in 2023, the 6 Nations of 2023, with the World Cup down the line, he's not going to start giving debuts to players unless they're of serious quality and they've put their hand up in that current year. So the following year is the next, 24 now we're into. So in this is the start of the cycle. So yes, you could argue that this is now when you'll start to blood players and get them ready and make some debuts. But lads, I think what people tend to forget is the 6 Nations is a hugely important competition. It's massive. Yeah. We haven't ever gotten past the quarterfinal of the World Cup, and we're talking about World Cups, and it happened in the last one as if this is it, this is going to happen, and blah blah blah. The World Cup is 4 years away. Anything can happen between here and there. We don't even 50% of the squad. I saw one of your texters putting in there. Might not even be in that World Cup squad. So there's no point in getting too far ahead of yourself. Look at Wales. Their superstar, Rhys Zammit, he's gone off the NFL. You don't know what's around the corner. So I wouldn't get too caught up in this whole idea of offering debuts to players in the 6 Nations now with a view to the World Cup in 4 years' time, because anything can happen. 2 years is around the time when you should be starting to think about that. But that doesn't mean to say that you don't look to blood new players should they be good enough. Let's say a Balakoon, for example, we're all talking about. Look at Mac Hansen. He got debuted when he was relatively unknown, but he was picked on form in Connacht, and many, and myself included, didn't think that was the right decision. I didn't see the X factor that Mac Hansen had when he first came onto the scene, but he never put a foot wrong when he got into that green jersey. So there's an awful lot of experts on X and everywhere else, and in discussions like we're having now. But these coaches are on hand, dealing with these players day in, day out, seeing what's happening. And then you also have coaches that want the game played in a certain way, and the players that are around don't fit into that mindset for them, you know. So I wouldn't
That's
read too
true.
much into those stats about debut in 4 years out from a World Cup. I really wouldn't.
But I tell, okay, fair enough. Thanks, Reggie. Point well made. But when Victor Costello was on the show, I don't know if you watched the show when he was on it that I sent you on LinkedIn just to give you a kind of a flavor. But he was kind of saying or leaning towards the idea that as fans, we get so caught up in winning every game, winning the Six Nations, winning a Grand Slam, that we're kind of blinded. Excuse me, we're kind of blinded in the World Cup cycle, and we forget that there's a World Cup coming up, and we're building to that, and we get so wrapped up in winning the bloody Six Nations, you know, the 3 or 4 that are in between each World Cup, that we just kind of we shouldn't be that way. Would you share his?
Well,
sentiment?
I suppose I understand what he's saying, and he's my brother-in-law, so I can say what I like about him. But
Go ahead.
but you know, Victor. The point, I get the point he's making, but what we have to, you always have to come back to understand with Ireland is, right? The Six Nations is our pinnacle competition because we have never done well in a World Cup. We have done well in the Six Nations. We've won it. We've Grand Slams. We've Triple Crowns. We've an unbelievably successful record. Going back to the early 2000s, you know, I mean, it's been a really, really like we became number one in the world on the back of Six Nations, Grand Slams, and then the other games followed on from that. You know,
Yeah.
You win your matches against your South Africans and your New Zealands on tours and everything else. They mean nothing. Like, I mean, obviously a Test series means something. Winning in New Zealand for the first time means something. Winning in South Africa, all those things mean something. But winning in the history books a Grand Slam is what it's all about, and that's what we have to aspire to. That's where our level is at the moment. Our level isn't to and we can consistently claim the right to go and win that championship every year, as things stand at the moment. We can't consistently claim to go and win a World Cup because we've never gotten past the quarterfinals. We can't even claim to get to the semi-finals of a World Cup. So you got to put everything into a bit of reality here as well and ground it. We must compete and be the best in the competition that we can win, which is the championship. And by the way, that's not a bad thing either, because it's better than every other competition that there is in the world, except for the World Cup. You know, so be the best at what you're made to do.
Come here. This was a bone of contention as well, Reggie, with Victor when we had him on. Does Victor owe you any points?
Yeah, points? I'm sick and tired of the points. He owes me a lot more than points, I can tell you. I got him his wife.
Very good. Okay, listen. Right, we move on. I was interested to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's I do understand, you know, the idea of blooding players and everything else. When the players are right, I suppose what's difficult for people to understand who are not in the system or who haven't been in the system, the step up from playing Champions Cup rugby, and that's the top level that the club scene plays at. The step up from that is unbelievable to international rugby. And I've seen more fellas broken on the back of good performances through a Heineken Cup, as it was back in my day, and being catapulted into Irish squads, and then suddenly realizing, shit, here, what is this all about? How come the game just got 10% faster than what it was last week, and the hits got 10% harder?
Very true. And Reggie, I will back that up. Last week we were having a discussion about who should be included and who not, and Cian Prendergast's name popped up in the discussion, and someone, like you've seen there in the bottom of the screen, someone typed in that, I think it's our colleague James Grennan actually, that Cian Prendergast has got man of the match for Connacht the last 4 or 5 games in a row, so he should be included. But then, like you just said, someone pointed out, John Peters actually, that as you just said, there's a big step up from being man of the match at a provincial derby or match to playing test level rugby. And I totally agree with you, Reggie. Yeah, you're absolutely bang on.
Especially when you look at what the balls they've made in the Champions Cup now, because they've turned it into a competition where Stade sent over the Espoir last week to Leinster, and like it's just the format is rubbish now. I mean, Sale sent over the second string team, albeit Leinster didn't perform particularly well against them, but they did. And I mean, in their day, Leinster should have put 50 points in that team, if not more. So, like, you can't, Prendergast, fair enough, Connacht, but look at Connacht, they went to Leon last week, a game arguably that they could have won, albeit they weren't allowed to play their star players, which is bizarre, in Bundyaki and stuff like that. But, like, the teams that they're playing against, they're not superstar teams. Some of them are like ranked 14, 15, 16 in these competitions. So you can have very good games against dodgy teams and look great. You look at Munster going to Toulon and putting a performance. Now, there's a performance. That's a game that, you got to say, well done. But we're back to the old style when they're down to their brass tacks of the few players left with 20 lads in the injury in the physio room, and you could counter argue that maybe Leinster should have put more on Stad than they did, that they were a bit sluggish against a weak team. There's all those things. But the reality of things is you don't get second chances at international level you don't get to make mistakes. You don't get to learn rugby on the pitch, on the international pitch. It doesn't work that way. And anyone that tells you otherwise, you've got to gently ease these players into it.
Like what they're doing with Sam Prendergast.
100%.
QED.
And the likes of Ollie Yeager and many others that it happened to in the past as well. A Joe McCarthy, for example, these types of players, a Hearn, what's his name, Gleeson, that's gone to the 20s. Those types of younger guys who are the future, no question. They are the future. But you can bring them on tours. You can bring them on less significant games than the Six Nations. I don't buy into that at all.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks, Reggie. Points well made. I just want to move on to something else now because a few things before we get to the games. Mike Reedy, I'm coming to you first on this because I know how you feel about this. The three out halves that we had are in Andy Farrell's squad. Between the three of them, they have 12 caps. Is this a failure? Is this a failure of planning, or is it a failure of coaching, or is it just that Johnny Sexton was too dominant over the years? He wasn't looking over his shoulder. I'm loath to say it or mention it because we know what kind of reaction it gets. If Paddy Jackson hadn't have messed up, he would quite possibly be there, but that's happened. But like, what is it? Is it a failure somewhere in the system?
It's a combination, Peter. Obviously, Johnny Sexton was so far superior to anything else almost in the world, in fairness, at the time. And continued to be up to the age of 38 years of age, which it's kind of, it's poor planning in one way, because we're now with a situation where you just quoted three players with a total of 12 caps going into a Six Nations round. That being said, I think the general consensus would be that Jack Crowley is the natural successor now to Johnny Sexton. It would appear that at the moment, and something, I really hope he hits the ground running in the Six Nations, and whoever is on the bench the same. I would prefer if it was Frawley anyway. I'm sorry, my opinion on.
Yeah, I know, but you must wear Kieran Frawley pajamas or something.
I don't.
You're always banging on about him and he's attention.
I just think I think he's a good player, and I think I can't understand what's happening at Leinster, what's holding him back as a number 10 at Leinster, and he needs to be playing regularly at number 10 for Leinster to have any aspirations like to becoming an Ireland 10. So
okay, fair enough.
Harry is probably fortunate, but we're kind of short for numbers. So
in that position, yeah. Okay, Richie Holland, Richard, what do you think of this?
Yeah, as Mike said, it's kind of a combination of everything you just said. Sexton at 38 was probably playing better rugby than he was at 28 in a lot of respects. He was just undroppable. That was the long and the short of it with Sexton. That, unfortunately, now we're kind of reaping the results of that, in that we have, what did you say, 12 caps or something between the three of them?
12 caps between Harry, Crowley and Frawley. That's
what we're reaping at the moment. Now, I know you could say Paddy Jackson probably would have been there, but that's water on the bridge, and we won't discuss that. Yeah. And obviously, the injury problems that Joey Carberry had is another thing that probably it couldn't be legislated for, and it's probably something that we're paying for now as well at the moment, in that we probably could have had, if he had stayed fit, he would have been heading towards 50 caps now, you know.
Yeah, true, actually, yeah, true. Okay, thanks, Richard. Peter Martin, what do you reckon with all this? Is Peter Martin there?
Yeah, well, just going back to what's kind of been said about what Mike has kind of said already, and Richard said, we've had a guy who's, you know, been world class for a number of years, going into his late 30s, and like Sexton can't affect those around him insofar as he can't really affect, you know, the physical conditioning of somebody. He can, certainly he has, I'm sure, by virtue of just sharing the same trading pitch, you know, he's improved everyone around him. And certainly, you know, the out halves who would have been in his shadow will have learned a certain amount from them. But the whole thing now is that Sexton's gone. There's no shadow there. They have to step out in the light and be themselves. And, you know, Crowley has been said, like, you know, the reason why Crowley was kind of favoured, or, you know, by Farrell, is that he had that kind of Sexton-esque type of personality. He was fairly chirpy on the pitch, constantly chatting and you know, giving stick where it was needed, like, you know, to his teammates if standards weren't good. And you hear in the paper about how when Crowley turns up, like, you know, he's the one who's one of the big characters, one of the main guys in the Munster setup, and he's driving standards. So he's now got his own. He's out on his own now. He's no one looking. You know, he's no one to look up to. He's there himself to try and kind of dictate and impart his own personality in the way he does things, because he can only be himself. He can't be anyone else. The other thing, I suppose, really is that there's not an awful lot between any of the three capped out halves and Prendergast is a massive. It potentially, I'd say, would open the door to massive competition once all of them are fit, firing, and getting game time in high quality, a high quality, you know, Champions Cup. That is opening up to a door, hopefully, in the next 3 years, that you'll have all four of them. It'll be a question of, we could be sitting around here in 3 or 4 years' time saying, well, who's going to get picks? They're all absolutely knocking it out of the park. And that's the ideal scenario that we want, that we have a glut of riches at 10. It's actually something I was going to mention to Reggie, and Mike has kind of mentioned it previously about props.
Ask away, there he is.
Reggie, are you still involved with Leinster on the development side with scrum management and scrum coaching?
No, I finished that in 2012. So I'm not involved at all now. But before we get on to props, I'd talk about the out-half situation. I mean, I think what a lot of people tend to forget is that, you know, people talk as if they're under rocks out there just waiting to be discovered. The out-half is the key role on the pitch. It's the Messi, it's the Ronaldo, it's the David Beckham, it's the quarterback, whatever you want to call it, but it's also the star elite player. I mean, you guys listed a list of people there that weren't getting succession planning or whatever, you know, that there wasn't a good enough succession planning. I would argue against that point, and the reason being is, and I'm not a cheerleader for the RFU or Leinster or anybody else. I'm just stating the facts as I see them. So while you guys were talking, I made a list here and I just went, right, Joey Carberry, Paddy Jackson, Ross Byrne, Harry Byrne, Crowley, Carkey, Prendergast, Ben Healy, who's gone away, Billy Burns. There's 10 out halves that over the past number of years have been given opportunities or brought through succession planning with other provinces outside of Leinster. You've got Connacht, you know, there and everything else, and none of them have proven good enough. Like you can argue they weren't given the time in the Irish jersey. Yes, I accept that argument, but none of them have set the world on fire with their provinces or their teams and suddenly been the player that you're going, geez, you can't leave him out. Joey Carberry in Chicago was the great next hope that was always going to be the man that they were putting their faith in. And Joey's been plagued with injury. Yeah. We've seen it non-stop. He's been injured his whole career. to the point that he's going to leave now or do whatever, you know. But I wouldn't just point to Ireland for that. I mean, what amazing out halves have Scotland produced apart from Russell in the last number of years? What have Wales?
He's not.
Well, he can turn a game. He can turn a game. But what I'm saying is, other like look at England. You know, Owen Farrell. I mean, what's you know since Johnny Wilkinson. Tell me, you look at Dan Carter in New Zealand, but they run through out halves in New Zealand on a regular basis as well. Manny Liebach for South Africa, is he the best you've ever seen? I don't think so. Australia have nothing. Exactly. So Australia have nothing. So we're talking here as if, you know, there's a glut of out halves out there that we have ignored and deliberately kept away from getting on that Irish team. And Johnny Sexton has been hogging the limelight. He's been 38 years of age playing in the World Cup because there were no other options. We couldn't believe me, there are people trying to produce them. They're trying to get them. I commentated on a lot of schools rugby over the years, and I looked at fantastic young out halves as they're coming through. But who has come through from? You know what I mean? Look at Irish under 20s teams over the years. Lots of very good out halves that have come through that system. The transition though doesn't happen. So. You know, it happens. Now, you're asking me about props. I remember when I went into that coaching role with Leinster with props, there was an abyss of props. In my day, you know, you had myself, Marcus Horan in the loose head area, and you had John Hayes in tight head. And then Mike Ross was brought in, and there was basically John Hayes and Mike Ross for I don't know how many years because there was no other tight heads breaking their way through. Then we started doing a coaching system setup. I coached the likes of Jack McGrath, Peter Dooley, even Keane came in. Like Keane started when I finished, you know, so there was work that I did there. The Burns, any number of. So, you know, like there was a problem in the front row at around that time, around the 2007, 2008 period. There was a shortage of front rows, and addressed the problem and developed props, and you've seen the results of that. Now you could argue that it's going, and it does go full cycle. There was a time period there as well where second rows were like hen's teeth. You know, after Malcolm O'Kelly was kind of finishing up, and there was just, you know, Paulie O'Connell was there with Donnacha O'Callaghan, but there weren't a whole lot of others that were kind of the amazing athletes that we're looking at today in that second row area. It does go in cycles. There's no question about it. For a long time, they wondered, would there ever be a replacement for Brian O'Driscoll and Gordon Darcy in the centres? You know? And then along come a Ringrose and a Henshaw and a Bundy and a Henshaw again. Yeah. So, like, you know, it does go in cycles. Wingers, back threes. It goes in cycles. But the problem is the 10, and scrum half is no different. But the problem is that the 10 is such a pivotal role. It's the most important role on the pitch, bar none. And if there's a bad game had, it's there for all to see, and it stands out. And I suppose that would be my argument. But I mean, I genuinely don't feel as negative about it. I mean, I think Crowley is phenomenal. I would agree about Frawley. I think he needs to be given more time at 10. I couldn't agree more with that. I think Harry Byrne needs time in the jersey. Ross Byrne has been a brilliant player. You know, he has been a brilliant servant to Leinster and a great player to Ireland when he's been there, bearing in mind that he never got a proper run at it, ever. You know, he's always been an in, out. And that's a very difficult thing to do as a player, to not get the consistency and not build up time with your team and build confidence in that jersey and constantly be getting knocked back. So Ross Byrne has been there as well. Prendergast has a great future. Carthy, and I don't agree about Paddy Jackson. I don't think he would have ever, no matter what happens, he would have ever continued on in there. I think he would have been found out a bit. Ben Healy didn't make it while he was here. He's doing great things now, but he didn't.
I was going to ask you, Reggie, was it a mistake letting Ben Healy go?
But sure, how was it a mistake? No one knew it, and he didn't do anything until he went away.
No, but
these things are always a mistake when after the fact. Like, he did nothing until he went away. Now you could argue that where he was didn't suit him, and he wasn't getting the opportunities, and the style of play didn't suit him. And now he's been given the, you know, with a different coach and a different squad of players and a different environment. He's obviously more comfortable. He's been given the allowance or freedom to play his game, and it's worked for him. And a happy player is a good player. you know.
Yeah, true. I actually, when he went, Reggie, and we'll finish on this because we were talking about this all night. I just thought that maybe Ben Healy might have stayed within the Irish setup.
But there
in the
wasn't an
summer.
offer there for him, so
If-
like,
Well,
yeah,
no,
no, yeah,
he actually
yeah. But
refused
if
it.
he could have,
He wasn't interested. He said he
yeah.
would only play for Munster, or else he wasn't going to play in Ireland.
yeah. All right.
I,
It
he
wasn't an
comes from
offer
the
that
same
suited
place.
him, you know.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
comes from
no,
the
that's
same
fair
place as me. My brother, my brother knows his family, and there was talks that I mean, a year out before he went, I was told he was going to Scotland. No, it wasn't picked as Edinburgh at the time, but I was told he was going to go to Scotland.
All right.
So
Okay.
so
Fair
he
enough.
had it in his mind anyway.
Right. Okay. So it wasn't a shock to the Healy family anyway.
No.
Right. Okay. Reggie, I'm going back to you, seeing as you're our guest, and you'll get most of the questions asked at you first off. And you touched on this, Reggie, earlier, and I wasn't really thinking about it until Bernard Jackman said it in his post-match commentary, and you said it, and I'd be really interested to explore this more. The idea now, all teams have done this. Leinster's done it. Leinster have done it. Munster have done it. Connacht also, and other teams in Europe, sending second-string teams to games. His basic point was that it's shortchanging the fans. It doesn't serve the better team any good. It's like a glorified training session for them. What team wants to be beaten 50 points to 3 or 47-6 or whatever the hell it was? It doesn't do anyone good. Now, every province, every team is guilty of it. Bernard Jackman basically his point was that before the Heineken Cup kicks off, if I don't know how feasible this is, each team in Europe names a 33-man squad, and they can't deviate from that bar injuries. What did you hear Bernard Jackman saying that or going on about that?
I didn't hear him saying it, no, but I would agree with that. I mean, anything to make it better. Like, you know, you say every team does it. I don't agree. The Irish teams don't do it. You might say Leinster send yeah, but hang on. Leinster send a second string team. That second string team is better than a lot of first string teams in a lot of other clubs.
Full of international.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's not a second string team. Munster don't do it because they haven't got the squad basis to do it. Ulster certainly don't do it, and Connacht don't do it because they don't have the big enough range of players outside of that. Like I'm talking about, the French teams are sending under 20s. You know, they're sending their academy teams at times. It devalues the competition no end. Now, I mean, I hate talking about my time, because it's so far back now that it kind of like you're going, oh Jesus, there they go again talking about the oldest. I don't mean it in this way, but that competition, the Heineken Cup, was the toughest thing that you could ever play in my time. There was pools of 6 games, and like you home and away. And every single game, even when you were qualified, there was lads coming to Lansdowne Road to try and kick the head off. It didn't matter. Cardiff, full strength teams, like it didn't matter who was in that. They were tough games. Going to France to try and win a game in the old Heineken Cup, it was like going to war. It was unreal. You know, it was unheard of to win in France. We beat Toulouse in 2006, and their fans stayed around for 2 hours afterwards to get autographs. That was such a big deal. You know, this is the level, the importance that was placed on that competition back in those days. And like I said, the best and most exciting weekends, for those of you who can still remember it, were round 5 and 6. Round 5 and 6 were the best weekends in that Heineken Cup, because there was deciders to be played. There was always going to be a red herring. Some team who were out of it were going to come over and they were going to cause havoc and they were going to upset the apple cart and they were going to destroy and make a balls of it. Like Sky used to have a little top 8 thing up in the top left-hand corner of the screen that was constantly changing during the game as the results were changing during the match, and it was all the excitement that went around that. What has happened to it now is nothing short of disgraceful. And you can't, like, teams, salary caps in England, serious problems for clubs going under financially, massive wages in France. Their competition is all about the top 14. It's just every year it feels to me that the Champions Cup is being devalued and getting less important. And if you don't put a halt to that, it's a spiraling thing downward very, very quickly.
But if you were sitting around the decision table of European rugby, and you were to give them 2 or 3 pointers. So what you, being ex-player involved, have played in the tournament, what would you direct them? What would you tell them to do?
Well, I like the Bernard Jackman suggestion of announcing the squad beforehand, and you have to pick from that. That's hugely important. I would ask them, what is it, lads? Why does it not mean so much to you? Why can't you commit to this? You know, what kind of a competition would you like to have? And you know, try and work in a partnership on this. You can't dictate these things anymore. Those days are gone. I would just ask them, what is going to make it work that you will engage and you will buy into this, and make it the competition that it needs to be. Because until it gets to that last 8, like, you know, around the 16 even, it doesn't seem to have the same draw that it used to have. But until it gets to that last 8, like there was Heineken Cup, Champions Cup games going on over the last couple of weekends. And I didn't even know some of them were on. Like, there was no build up to it. There was no major hype. And this is, look, I mean, this is another thing. The whole mess of TV at the moment and where it's going, and, you know, it's on 14 different channels for different rugby, for here, for that, for the other. That's having a big effect as well. I mean, it was a big thing on Sky Sports back in the day. And that was your only place to get it. You had to have your Sky Sports to see your Heineken Cup. Now you got to have BT. Now you got to have TNT. Now you got to have for URC. You got to have Premier,
TV,
you know, you know, and some of it's free to air with. So that doesn't help the situation. But yeah, I mean, look, I suppose they need to sit down, and they'll probably argue we're doing that and we're doing this and we're talking to them and it is. And I suppose at the end of the day, if they don't buy in, they don't buy in. But there should be repercussions. There should be repercussions to teams if they don't send a proper team over, you know. But they're afraid of their lives because they're terrified that the French will turn around and go, sure, we'll pull out.
Yeah, we lose interest and go off. Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said there, Reggie. Totally agree with you.
Just to pick up on your point, Reggie, there about teams that are at sin. I just wonder now, given the fact that there's financial difficulty for so many of the clubs, like you've got certain clubs that will say, you're talking about Stad in last week against Leinster winning over the Esquire and all that. I just wonder, given that the likes of Stad, I think Stad were in financial difficulty at some stage, that it's all down to the financials. That literally, that once it's dictated from the start, that, you know, are like, you know, it's like the money is basically dictating where the focus is. It's not a question of saying, well, look, there's a wonderful competition called the Champions Cup. You know, it's the peak, it's the premier competition in Europe. You know, where you're obliged to do your best. It's money is dictating. If it's going to cost too much to send a team over to Leinster or wherever, go to Northampton or wherever part of England it is to take, and they know they're going to get their asses handed to them anyway, perhaps they'll say, well, you know what, we'll just make a decision. It's a dead rubber. We're going to concentrate on our domestic competition. Is that perhaps what's going on? Because
there's another not small, very real element to this as well, okay? And that is manufactured teams. So the likes of Racing, Stad, and a number of other teams over the years, the likes of Toulon and these places have come and gone, right? Manufactured French teams where a big sugar daddy comes in with €25 million budget, decides he's going to build a team. It's going to be his toy for a while, or her toy at this stage. I better be politically correct. And they build this thing and they stick it out there, and then after 3 or 4 years they get tired of it and they don't put the same level into it that it was, and all of a sudden, as you say, there's financial difficulty. You look at Toulouse. There's a club steeped in nothing but history, nothing but academies. I love Toulouse. They're my favourite club, Bernal. I always have been since I played over there with them. I was over there with Trevor for the World Cup. I stayed in Toulouse. I love it so much for the World Cup. That's how fond I am of the place. Their history is incredible. They look after their fans. Their fans are the club. They take every game they play seriously. They've won so many Heineken Cups. They've got statues up outside the ground about the Heineken Cups because it means something to them, because it's part of their history, and as is the top 14. And it's all about the club, the game, and pride in the jersey, right? And you can argue very much so that is the case with the likes of Leinster and Munster too. Connacht have pride in the jersey, they just don't have enough budget. Ulster used to have pride in the jersey, but the way they played last weekend, I don't know what they have pride in anymore. But there's pride in certain. Leicester were a team in England, for example, that had pride in their club. You have to kind of go back to the grassroots of rugby. And when you start getting these manufactured teams and these put together toys, it's too easy for them to walk away from it because there's no history to it. There's no sort of like I remember playing Begler Bordeaux and putting 98 points in the Heineken Cup, biggest scoreline ever done down there. And now look at the team Bordeaux are now. It's incredible. So there's so much more to it, and you have to unless you get buy-in from the clubs that they that it means something to them, like it does to Toulouse. You're wasting your time.
Yeah. Good point, Reggie. Good point. Peter Martin, a brief point on what the question about the second string teams and what Bernard Jackman suggested, 33 man squad before the whole tournament kicks off.
Look, that concentrates the mind really. If it's made compulsory, that's going to be it kind of forces the hand of those who've got their eyes elsewhere. If it just makes it anything to make it that little bit more interesting. Like there's an awful lot, as Reggie said, there's an awful lot of fooling and farting around with formats and whatever. And I think everybody's in agreement. You go onto Twitter and nobody is saying that the current format is the bee's knees, and it's just amazing. It's not. It's far from it. Yet no, here we are. We're still talking about rugby. We're still looking forward to next weekend's matches because we still believe that there's still going to be absolute gems thrown up regardless, like we had Munster and Toulon last weekend, because there's still a semblance of some fantastic rugby in the rubble of the bullshit kind of administration and organisation that's there at the moment.
Yeah, true. Okay, Mike Reedy, what are your thoughts on all this?
I would agree with all that. I think it's a great idea what Bernard Jackman has come up with, to actually have to put forward a squad prior to the competition kicking off, and you pick your team. You don't be fucking about bringing academy players and stuff like that for a Champions Cup. I mean, it's become a bit of a joke really, because it should be the pinnacle. It's the pinnacle of European rugby outside European club rugby and world club rugby for that matter at this moment. Because the championship down in the southern hemisphere has become a bit of a joke as well. So it is next to the Six Nations, it's the pinnacle of European rugby, and it should be taken seriously. And it's unfortunate that French teams don't seem to, outside of your Toulouse. Now La Rochelle seem to be at the moment.
Because Ronan O'Gara is there driving it. They never took it seriously before until Ronan O'Gara went there and he realised, hang on a second, there's a history of the European Cup that means something special. He's been part of that history and he wants his team to win it. That's why it's been driven down there.
Yeah.
Well, okay. That's what's needed in as well. Somebody, but the French are funny anyway. They're fickle people. You'll know that if you've lived over there.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, thanks, Mike. Richard Holland, what are your thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah, it's just about them sending over a second stream team or all that kind of thing. It's bad for morale when you're skittled by 50 points or whatever. But we used to have a coach when I was in the good council, and he used to say, you learn more from winning the game by 3 points than you learn from winning it by 30. You learn more about your character and what sort of team you actually have if you grind out as a result, as opposed to get absolutely skittled in the team,
true. Yeah, true.
There are knock-on effects as well. Sorry, just to finish on it. Let's say back in the old day, you were relying. You didn't play your best rugby throughout it, but you might have been relying on that Wasps versus Stade game or Wasps against Toulon or wherever. They might do you a favour. There's a chance that if they beat them, then we'll come in as the best runner-up in that group and this, that. No chance of that anymore. If it comes down to it, and the team is only 1 point and they're out of it, they're not good. There's no favours that can be done. You're gone. So they just gave that element of excitement about the final weekend as well.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, no, totally agree. Yes. Just a couple of comments, gentlemen. Someone says 100% agree with Reggie. I think that was your point about the teams.
That was my wife. Yeah.
That was your wife, yeah. Someone else
The only
said,
time you're right, Reggie.
Someone else says, play the URC between September and January. Play the European Cup between mid-March and May. I don't know how that work. Someone else says, all this. Where's it gone? All this talk of Sky Sports back in the day is giving me flashbacks to Stuart Barnes commentaries. He talked Olympic levels of shite. Someone else is agreeing with you there. Yes, true, Reggie, and your thoughts on Ulster. Here's someone else. Oh, this always comes up every week. Ask him if he thinks Russell is a spoofer, only for Peter Burke. Yes, thanks very much. That happens every week. Okay,
Dara Weston, money.
Dara Weston, I'd say, yeah. Okay, right, Reggie, back to you. Apparently, the bunker and the shot clock are under review for the Six Nations, whether they're thinking where they're going to use them or not. What are your thoughts on those two things, particularly the bunker, which came into a bit of controversy in the World Cup?
I like them, to be honest with you. The bunker being the review of the orange card. That's where we're talking with that bunker, yeah? Yeah, I like them. I think it just speeds the game up. Anything that speeds the game up. The shot clock I like as well because it does that. What I don't like, and I have an absolute rising aversion to, is the TMO involvement in the game. It's just, I remember when it was brought in, it was the greatest thing ever when it was brought in to review tries. Try or no try, end of story. And now basically it's turning into NFL. You know, it's just gone too far. The games are so stop-start now. I mean, they're trying to speed the game up by forcing kickers to have a kick in 90 seconds and getting players off and reviewing the bunker, and then they slow it down for 5 minutes while they look at a video from 14,000 different angles.
I kind of think, Reggie, that I think there is definitely a place in the game for a incarnation of a TMO. I think, like, sometimes a try, a ref doesn't have full view of it. The lines.
The try I just said, yeah, when it came in, absolutely, 100% agree with the try element of it. I'm talking about going back the pitch to lineouts that were on the halfway line and things like that. Right. There's so much of that involvement now. You're kind of, a team scores a try and everybody's celebrating. Your man's about to take the kick, and the next thing is, hold on, we've spotted something 14 spaces to go down the pitch.
Sorry, I misunderstood you, Reggie. No. Yes, I agree with that. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, no, that type of stuff. That part of it needs to be reviewed.
Yeah, totally agree with that, Jess. Sorry, I misunderstood your initial point. Yeah, absolutely, Reggie. Yeah. Okay, Peter Martin, your thought, the bunker and the shot clock. I don't know why they're getting rid of the shot clock. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, look, I'm just going to basically agree with what Reggie said. It's like the bunker kind of, it's serving a purpose insofar as it is speeding up the game. I suppose it's absolving referees of having to make a tough decision. Though it's some of the decisions, and we've spoken about this last the last year, where it was as clear as the jersey I'm wearing myself is red. It's a red card, and it's still going to be the yellow card with a bunker. You're just going, for fuck's sake, just give them the other fucking card. Like, it's a bloody red card. Make the goddamn decision. But apart from that, it serves a good purpose. The shot clock, basically, the grass grows under some of these kickers' feet as they're waiting to kick it. So move it up. But like Reggie said, bringing back for a potential knock on the ruck before, the double miss move is given to.
I also feel the people.
Where are we going with this? It's nothing.
People in the truck.
What I would say is it should be restricted within 3 phases of a try or something like
3
that.
or 4 phases.
What I was going to say on that was just in the truck, because I've been in these trucks, so many of them. There's loads of screens, and there's about 4 or 5 people looking at all of this. Like, you can see a knock on when it happens on the pitch. All 5 of us know if the ball's been knocked down watching the match.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to go another 10 phases and scored in the corner to see that was a high tackle, that was a knock on, he came in from the side. As rugby people, we can see that instantly. So how come the people in the truck can't just go, before it's gone on that 12 phases, can't just turn around and go? So either they don't have the right people in there watching it, or I don't know. But that's when it should be happening. Just
there's a comment there, Reggie and Pete and everyone. limit the reviews to 3 phases. Keep the shot clock. Bunker for dangerous play only. I don't know.
Yeah, that would work perfectly if what I just said was in play, where somebody was sharp enough to spot that was a knock on there. We need to review that instantly. They're reviewing that in real time while the game is going on and going, it was a knock on. Stop the game now. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, very good. Yep. I totally agree with you, Reggie and Pete. Mike Reedy, any thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah, I agree. Well, the shot clock should definitely stay in place, and the bunker should only. I mean, the TMO should have no. He shouldn't be jumping into situations unless he's actually asked. Unless it's a serious foul play, where then the TMO should be asked or should put forward his review, but there shouldn't be. There's absolutely no way going back several phases to find a knock on. It happened in the World Cup final, like New Zealand scored a try and it was fucking disallowed for some a drop ball at a line out about 6 phases previous. But that's wrong. Like and that's not speeding the game up. That's slowing the game down. But
okay,
no.
fair enough. Okay, thanks, Mike. Richard Holland, briefly on this.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. The shot clock, I think it's a good thing, but this bunker thing, the potential is there for it to be a good thing, but at the moment they're making a complete balls of it. And
I believe, sorry, Richard, I believe it came out that they weren't world qualified referees in the bunker.
So they were just sitting there looking.
God almighty.
Well, there's another problem in that there's not enough referees as it is to be able to bring in something like that. The pool of referees is relatively small.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, finally, just before we go in and look ahead, we won't have time to review last weekend's games. We'll have just time to look forward to next weekend's games. But briefly, yes or no answers, or couldn't care less. So yes, no, couldn't care less. Richard Holland, names on the backs of the jerseys for the Six Nations.
I don't really care. I'll be honest with you. It doesn't bother me.
Grant. Okay, Reggie.
Couldn't care less.
Good man. Peter Martin.
Yeah, I suppose couldn't care less either. It's going to happen either way.
Okay, excellent. Mike Reedy.
Yeah, I'm not bothered either. The one thing I will say is it could be beneficial for people to get people that don't know much about rugby get them involved. Like bringing in more bigger fan base. Because other than that, I couldn't care less. I've been watching rugby for 50 years. I don't need fucking somebody's name on the back of their shirt.
Okay, right. Before we have a look at next weekend's games, there's just a comment there from someone. Bill Beaumont will destroy rugby and turn it into NFL with the amount of replays, reviews, etc. We'll end up with 3 refs on the pitch and a match that lasts 4 hours, including all the breaks, including an ex-forward in a little golf cart because no forward will run around for 80 minutes. Well, there you go. That's, at one point anyway. Yeah. Right, let me see, gentlemen. Next weekend's Champion Cup. Your thoughts on predictions. Richard Holland, I'll go to you first. Connacht are at home to Bristol Bears. How do you see that going?
I think it's going to be a long day for Connacht. Somehow or other, I think they're going to be absolutely skittled. They've nothing to play for now anyway, so I think they're just going to be absolutely skittled.
Okay, fair enough. Reggie?
I think they'll put up a good performance, actually. Bristol, won't like going to the sports ground. The weather might be a factor. We'll have to see what's going to happen with that. But Connacht tend to bounce back after a really poor performance, and Leon, you'd argue, was a poor performance. So I'd expect a bit of a bounce back from them. So I don't know.
Can you see
I wouldn't be surprised.
If you were to call a win, lose, or draw, Reggie?
Well, you'd have to say that the odds are against them.
Right. Okay. Peter Martin, Connacht at home to Bristol.
Yeah, well, that'll be an interesting. It's. Is it the first time that Pat Lam has faced Connacht since he left?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
I would agree with Reggie. I think there'll be a reaction from Connacht, but I do think they'll want the 16th man of the sports ground, which is the howling misery of weather that's apparently forecast this weekend. So they'll need every bit. They'll need every bit of help they can get. Connacht. I'll say Connacht by 3 points.
Ooh, okay.
It'll be the worst game of rugby probably seen this side of this side of the Six Nations. But like, I'd say Connacht might just get the 3 points, might get the win, scrape it.
Okay, fair enough. Mike Reedy.
I actually agree with Peter. I have a funny feeling Connacht are going to turn this around. They have nothing to lose. They actually do still have something to play for. There's a very, 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 very small chance that they can still.
Oh, very slim.
But it's not going to happen. But I actually do think they could win this, by the way, by a very small margin.
Right. Okay. Mike Reedy, back to you. Quins are entertaining Ulster.
Oh God. Jesus, Ulster. I just can't. I can't make a case for them at all. I can't in any game now at the moment. I mean, they turn around against was it who did they play? Won a couple of weeks ago. Fucking brilliant. And
Leinster.
Oh, it's Leinster. Yeah, that was right.
Yeah, Leinster. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Outside of that,
I didn't want to say, Reggie. Thanks for reminding me.
Shock in itself, But no, I think Quins. I can't see. I mean, Quins aren't great either, but I can't see Ulster getting anything there. Not even a losing bonus point.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Peter Martin, Quins entertaining Ulster.
Yeah. To quote our Connacht friends, James Grennan's words that he uses for his own team on a regular basis. Yeah. Family flowers only, house private. I think it's going to be a case that it's going to be Ulster are in a hole, and I think the sooner McFarlane just gets handed,
his P45.
Yeah, it's just there's nothing positive coming out of that province at the moment, I don't think.
Okay, fair enough. Reggie Corrigan, Quins entertaining Ulster.
Yeah, I think Quins will put a serious score on them, to be honest with you. They put 54 points on Cardiff last weekend. Cardiff were getting a bit of form of late. And at home, they should have been more difficult to beat than that. And Quins seemed to make an easy job of it. Ulster just fell to pieces against Toulouse. I mean, they just didn't want to know. They just did not want to know. And as
they were outclassed, Reggie. They were outclassed.
They were outclassed, yeah, absolutely. So I don't see them finding a way to not be outclassed away to Harlequins this week. Sitting in fourth position in their table with 5 points. They haven't shown us anything different. They really haven't. Like they're the strangest team ever. Like they can go out and play like they did against Leinster and play brilliantly and be deserved winners. There's no argument at all on my part. They deserved their victory, and then go and do what they did last week. I mean, and now don't get me wrong, Toulouse are by far the best team in this competition, in my opinion, by far. And you know how much I love them, so they're my favourite team apart from Leinster. But so there's class there all around. But somebody said to me that there was 13 players in that Ulster team that have international status, including the World Cup winner, and they were made look like kids playing against men. So I can't see how they'll beat Harlequins when Harlequins need a win.
Okay, thanks, Reggie. Richard Holland, what do you think?
Yeah, well, the Queens need to win, so I think they will, and will do it in style. It's going to be a massacre, I think. I'll be honest with you.
Okay. All right, Richie, back to you, and we go around the other way. Leicester are entertaining Leinster.
I think it's going to be a good match. I think it'll probably be the match of or one of the matches of the weekend. I think Leinster will just about shade it. 9, 10. Well, not shade it. It'll be 9 or 10 points to Leinster.
Okay, Reggie, what do you think about this one?
Leicester were appalling last week, lads. They went away and didn't show up. They were absolutely appalling. I was surprised at how bad they were. So they're going to have to bounce back. Leinster are not there yet. They're a fantastic team, but they're not there yet. They've still got a little bit of work to do. They're having to work to get their scores, but there's no doubt they're getting their scores. You know what I mean? So I think there'll be more of a challenge in this game for them because Leicester have to bounce back after such a poor performance last week. And they need the points, bonus points and everything
Yeah.
else. They need to keep themselves. They're safe, but they need to get a little bit higher up the rankings. So Leinster by 10 points, I'd say 10 to
All right.
12.
Okay, Peter Martin.
Yeah, just before I give me a bit on that, there's someone's after putting up a very important point there.
I was going to read that out. I was going to read that out.
Yeah, most important point I took away from the Leinster match last Saturday. No hot whiskey available at any bar in the Viva on the coldest match ever been this season, and the curry chips are the burgers are dry. Look, I was there at the match and I wanted a hot whiskey, and because it was absolutely freezing me bits off, and it was a disgrace. It was a disgrace. Like the catering in the Viva is absolutely abysmal, absolutely abysmal. But anyway, that aside, I agree with that guy 100%. That aside, just La Rochelle put 45 points up on Leicester, as Reggie pointed out. Leicester were awful. With the same margin, if you want to look into it, like Leinster bet La Rochelle away from home and did a good job. I'd say I would expect Leinster to depending on the team they pick. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see if Crawley's enough to start again at 10 or if Harry Byrne's going to come back in. Sam is likely to be on the bench. Either way, I would say. I would expect probably 10, 15 point win for Leinster. I would expect it to be a good game because obviously there'll be a reaction, a bit of hurt from Leicester, so they'll try and put up to Leinster. But I think Leinster will have too much.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Mike Reedy.
I agree with what Richard said. I think it could be the game of the weekend. This one, and I always expect Leinster to win no matter who they're playing. To be honest with you, so I'd say Leinster will win it by 5 or 6 points at least. Okay, and last one, and we'll wrap it up after this because we're gone over time again. Mike Reedy, we've gone back that way. Munster are entertaining Northampton in Thomond Park. Yeah, at the moment, we don't know what we're going to get from Munster. I mean, they fucking had the game of the season last week, and if they do the same, if they play as well as they did last week, I think they'll beat Northampton. By the way, as good as Northampton are, I think they have a chance. And it's a hard one. It's a tough game for them. But Munster at Thomond Park are a hard team to knock off their perch. I'm going to go for Munster, win it by 3. Okay, Peter Martin.
Yeah, look, I think Munster are playing at the moment. They've got I won't say a free pass, but they're almost in that space where they've nothing to lose because they've got the massive excuse of the ridiculous injury list. But they're in a good spot there at the moment. They're building a bit of mental resilience, I think, with all the injuries that are going on and people are writing them off. So I think it suits them. And they're in that spot. They pulled out a performance last weekend, and they'll be saying, "Right, lads, let's do 2 weeks of this." And now, granted, they're up against Northampton outfit, which are one of the best in the Gallagher Premiership. Not that we're saying the Gallagher Premiership is a wonderful competition by any stretch, but it'll probably be another level up on Toulon. I would say Munster by 5 points.
All right. Okay. Reggie.
I think Munster are 100% going to win this game. I would be unbelievably confident of it. They need to win this game. They played brilliant last week. They've got key men back from injuries. Northampton, Gallagher, don't, it doesn't count. So they're not going to come over to Thomond Park and beat Munster in Thomond Park. I'd be stunned if they do. They'll be found out. They also probably won't play 100% frontliners. I don't think they will because they can use that as an excuse then when they don't win. English teams don't like going to Thomond Park. Irish teams don't like going to Thomond Park, but English teams particularly don't like going there. I'm backing Munster all the way for this.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Reggie. Richard Holland.
Yeah, look, we have that match last weekend. I think it was the kick in the arse that Munster needed for their season. So I'm expecting them to kick on, and they're probably 10 or 15 points. I think they'll beat them by. So.
Okay, well, that's all the games, and I just see a comment there, and if anyone has just a very, very quick reaction. Someone says very negative on the Ulster front, guys. You just never know what Ulster team turns up. Hopefully, the team that beat Racing Connacht and Leinster. Anyone want to? Are we being unfairly negative on Ulster?
That's the problem with Ulster. What team turns up?
That's the reality of it. That's why we're being negative, because we just don't know what we're getting.
Jesus, I don't want to say these things about Ulster. I don't. I want them to. I want them to win every fucking game that are playing against an Irish team. And
what have Ulster done to prove anybody wrong on the negativity? That's the question I'd ask first and foremost.
Not much.
Like they seem to get a free ride. I mean, I coached in Ulster, and I have lots of friends in the rugby circles from Ulster. And you ask the lads that I played against, the likes of Ferris and all of my era, of what they think of Ulster at the moment. You're not going to get a very positive reaction from any of them, I can tell you. So, like this business of don't be negative against Ulster, lads. You got to front up and accept it. Like we'd be quick enough to be negative about Munster and Leinster in the past when it was needed, and Connacht we've been negative about them too on this. So, grow a pair and front up.
Good man, very well said, and very good final words to finish the show on, Reggie. All right, all that's left for me to do is to thank Mike Reedy, Richard Holland, Peter Martin, and our guest this evening, Reggie Corrigan. I want to thank you so much for your time, your input.
You're welcome.
It's been very kind of you to take part, and thanks, Reggie.
Delighted.
Thanks,
lads. Enjoyed it.
Cheers, Reggie.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Cheers, lads.
Cheers, everyone.